Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sakna Vavadu, Sakna Sakaviryam Karavavage, Tejasvina Vadida Mustama Vatvishavage. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha, Malam Sarirasya Chavaitagena, Yopaga Rutmam Pravaram Munina, Patanjali, Pranjali Rana Dasmi. Good morning. This prayer that I just now recited is about the Guru Patanjali. We pray to him, and on all of our behalf, I offer the prayers that I ventured into with my limited knowledge to give you something about Yoga Darshana. So may we get the true import of it, and for sure that we don't get any Viparita Jnana. But we are not going to jump into the text right away. We need to have certain background. See, Vedanta is for life. So I do not see there is a practical life and there is Vedanta. Because even the word practical life doesn't mean much, because life is not theory. If you're living, we are living, we are practicing life. So practical life is to live. And any instructions, any knowledge that helps us to live happily, perfectly, is what we need. And in my limited view, Vedanta gives exactly that. It has been problematic because people somehow put a very highly philosophical, esoteric, complex stuff in Vedanta. Therefore, it is something for intellectual pursuit, not for life. That's the reason why it has been so much in a kind of a corner. Why I say this? Because life is anubhavadhara. Life is experience. If there is no experience, there is no life. Is it not? So an experience doesn't exist if you are not conscious of the experience. Is it not? That means to understand life, you must understand consciousness. But how do you understand consciousness? Because consciousness is what makes everything to be understandable. That's the reason we normally don't dwell into this seemingly esoteric concept. The point I'm trying to say is, therefore, to lead a good life, you need to understand life. Life is experience, experience is consciousness. Consciousness is the very nature of ourselves. Therefore, a science that teaches us becomes the Bible or the manual of practical life. So that's how we started with the Vedanta journey. But then why are we going into a Yoga Darshana? What is the purpose? How is it related to this? So these are the questions that we need to really understand, so that when we approach it, we have very clear scope and very clear mind. Because we are going to go from a Vedantic school of thought to a different school of thought. Therefore, we need to really maintain the scope of our pursuit. So the best way to do that is that we go back and recap what we spent in the 45 weeks on the understanding Vedanta. It talks about liberation, emancipation, redemption, moksha, fulfillment, all these big words. These are not in our normal vocabulary. It's not something we get every day. What do we do for liberation today? We don't. Because those words are very much loaded, but only for those who have, by the prolonged virtuous acts, punyas, prolonged good deeds of this life and many lives, they're able to have a trigger in the mind to think about this, what used to be an esoteric concept, to be a practical concept. Can I get fulfillment? What is this moksha? So it is going to be very, very few people, because not all people all the time think about it. So this comes to us, there is something which we can think about it, learn about it. So the minority of those like us, when they get it, then Vedanta invites you. So we got the invitation. Thank you for the satsang, because for the moment this kind of thoughts come to your mind, you can verify for yourself. Your life get reoriented without your effort. If you just think back, the moment this kind of thought comes to you, you suddenly see more and more of this kind of concepts coming into your life. You meet people like this, such an invitation comes through. Your mind is going towards this. So the reorientation happens automatically. Then we had this opportunity. Yes, I want to understand what it is. Then the Guru's given us the knowledge. So we started with the principles of Vedanta, and then we took this mukshuna midartaya tattvabodha abhidiyate. For those who are looking for liberation and fulfillment, I am presenting you this tattvabodha, the teacher said. So we queued up, we started to learn and get this knowledge immediately. But then he started talking about things which probably we didn't have fully. He talked about vivekam, vairagyam, shadasambhati. He talks about qualifications again. So many classes we've gone through, and it said you have to have the adhikaratvam qualifications. And we thought, oh, here you go again. There's a roadblock now. I know I don't have the qualifications. I come to this because I wanted to know about moksha. Now you tell me this half dozen qualification I must get, some of the madhis. I don't have that yet, or at least I have not perfected. So should I go back now? You can't get into the sea when there is no tide. You can't wait for it. Then Shastra gives you an allowance. That's fine. Since you are asking for it, you are interested in it, that itself is a very good qualification to start with. Therefore, give me a promissory note that you will definitely go back and do what is necessary to qualify while I am teaching you why the qualification is going to help you in attaining what you need to attain. So we all wrote a little promissory note within ourselves. Then with our limited qualification, we entered into understand Vedanta. So it turned back, it looked on the simple principle. Life is full of experiences, consciousness. Therefore, take control of your life. You need to know what are the components of this life. And then to make it as general as possible, as holistic as possible, and as simplified as possible, it puts into three chunks. You, yourself, and everything else that you deal with, the Jagat, and this big man, big woman, whoever is there managing all this, the Ishvara. So it has taken our little problem of our life, my peace, my grief, my yearnings. But when I come to Vedanta class, it says, yeah, fine, but this is common to everybody else. Let us solve the big problem. You can't go away because I don't want to solve the big problem. I will stick with myself. You can't do because you touched upon a problem which is a single problem for the whole humanity. So we labored this point. Okay, tell me what all this. Then Vedanta started taking essence of many schools of thought and give you the components of you, I. Because we're talking about consciousness, that means there is something not conscious, a subject and an object. So it called subject and Atma, an object and Anatma. And then it explained the whole world, and particularly yourself, as a mix of Atma, Anatma, Sangama. Chetana, Achetana, Chit, Achit. It then becomes so easier to categorize. You see, in problem solving, you first categorize, enumerate, categorize. Categorization is very important. So we categorize into Chit and Achit. Then we can have focus on each one separately. Then we started going through this Achetana part, Achit part, Anatma part. And then we dissected into many, many, many groups. In particular, at 24 different groups. With all this kind of a discussion gave us an opportunity to move away from this mix. Nati, naiti. I am not this Sharira, I am not this Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha. I am not a Stula Sariram, Sukshma Sariram, Karma Sariram. I am who? I am the Atma, I am the Jivatma. The God who creates this world out of himself, therefore the God is the world. So Jagat and Ishvara is one and the same. So it came with a conclusion that, which is the fulfillment, Ishvara, God, Brahma, whatever it is single transcendental reality. It's called Brahman. And it showed us its nature is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Existence, because you exist. Life is existence. Consciousness, yes, consciousness is the essence of life. And it is bliss. Bliss is, in other words, is not an earned happiness. It is our natural self. Why am I saying this? You don't ever get up one day and then call your GP and say, I have a problem. I seem to be always happy. Every day I get up, the whole life is blissful. Something wrong with me. You never say that. Why? Yes, little headache, a little pain in the toe, then you create a drama. Why is this? It's because what is natural to you, you don't worry about it. So our natural subhavam is blissfulness. Therefore, if you are unhappy at some time, the equation can be changed into you are not yourself at that time. Now, if you take that problem in that way, the problem solving becomes your responsibility, that you have to be yourself. You see, I'm not therefore saying that you don't solve the world's problem. You solve the world's problem for the world's sake. But for your sake, you solve your problem to knowing who you are. And then Vedanta talked to us that single entity Brahman, its inherent potency, which is infinite in nature, is called Shakti. And that creates this omnipotency, omnipresence by this play called Maya, which employs two distinctive powers, power of hiding and power of showing. Because in life, knowledge is what? Either you know, you do not know. Hiding is ignorance, projecting is knowledge. So if you take the whole life is only these two plateaus. I am ignorant, I am knowing. Ignorance gives you trouble and happiness. Knowing gives you trouble and happiness, depending on what you do know, what you do not know. This is Maya. And this creation of omnipotency, into which the very nature of Brahman dwells. It's called Prakruti. So the whole Vedanta, if you need to summarize in one or two sentences, this is this, that Brahman is everything, but he did not solve our problem. He does say that containing all, so I am part of it. But then it goes and says, Tattvamasi, that you are. Now, this is the shock of our life. We went for a small problem solving. We took a universal problem and come to the solution. Tattvamasi, the teacher says, you are that, which means I am that. Aham Brahmasmi. Then I don't need moksha. I am liberated. Why? Then there is no karma, no dharma. I am beyond that. Now, we can naturally ask a question. If this is practical, yes. If you understand what his life is about. Then when you're about to ask the question, I understand this. How do I go about it? The book ends. So what do we do now? We go back where we started, the promissory note that you get the qualifications to realize this. You know, you want to go to Mount Everest, trekking you want to do. So you go to the trekking company and say, look, I want to be climbing up Mount Kailash or Mount Everest, whatever. Then they give you a long list. The list contains what you need to carry, how fit you need to be. So you say, look, I'm not yet fit. What do I do? I said, okay, go do all this for 3-4 months and come back. Or they can tell you, if you're a very clever salesman, but they'll tell you, yes, you do all this, but by the way, before you go, I'll tell you what you will be missing if you don't take this trip. Then they give you a video, they show you that one. If you have money, you can even have a helicopter ride, go an aerial view of Mount Kailash and say, it's so beautiful. It is not trekking. You're not done. You're not got the experience of it, but you got a glimpse of it. The idea is that it motivates you. That's the reason why we got the allowance to read this text, even though we are not qualified, to get motivated, understanding of it. But we need to now go to the gym. So the gym that we are going to is the school of yoga. See, all this stuff about liberation and emancipation, all this, liberation is not an attainment to happen sometime in the future. Because if you think of a future means you think of a time. But we already got away with time, space. Because eternity is not existing in a everlasting duration. No. Because that will be a function of time. Eternity is existence in durationless time, which means present, timelessness. So there is a great insight in what I'm saying here. Therefore, the liberation, moksha, is to be eternal. It has to be timelessness. Timelessness means this spacelessness. And we want to see it, experience it. That means I have to be in a state of absorption that is so intense that spatial and temporal variables, time and space, get completely submerged into my being. To taste it. It is not nishta. It's not going to ever last, because that absorption, you cannot maintain it. If you can maintain it, it's fine. So it is therefore a hope given to us that you can do that. But this is all about psyche, is it not? Why can't this all be done in one go? See, if you look at the anatma based, we learned in Vedanta, Sthula Sarira and Sukshma Sarira. Leave the Karana Sarira away, because it is not a Sarira, it is just the accumulation of our karma. The Sukshma Sarira is the psychic part of your body. Psychology has been in currency now, it's growing now very fast. But in 20s, 30s, 40s, it has got a very low currency, even the medical community. Psychologists were not looked upon very highly in those days, because the domain of expertise that you exercise, the test data that you deal with, is very subjective. Science, the purest of science, thought objectivity is the goal. Subjectivity is biased. So they basically cut short an enormous part of problem-solving skill. And looking for, like a blind man looking at an elephant. Looking at the matter. See, if you take, say every human body is what? Made out of same material, is it not? If you look at the material science, all bodies, human bodies, of same material. So you take half a dozen or maybe 100,000 human bodies and dissect and do whatever you need to do. Material science would give you everything. Biology, cell science, tissue science, nervous science, bone. You know everything. Then by that, can you say you know every human being? Even one human being? Do you know them? What happened? You spend all your thing doing a material science, but you can't even define what a human being is. See, the importance of psychic part in personality is huge. We never spend time on that. We spend time to warm up your body, exercise, all important. Exercise, dress up, go to the beauty parlor. But it's only one part of it. Don't get me wrong, body is important. Bhoga ayadanam. To enjoy, experience, body is an instrument. But it's only one small part of it. This is not just the human body. Psychology is there in even every living being. Because you see, if everything is same, that's what Vedanta says here in front of us, everything would have this kind of mix in a different way. I'm saying psychology of an animal, of a plant. Does the animal have got emotions? You pet, you know it. If you have a pet, you know it. You see a dog, you take a stone, it'll run away. It knows stone is to hit. You have biscuit, it comes to you. I think the Darwin's theory, Darwin took wonderful science contribution he made about theory of evolution. Again, looking very objectively, structural way of looking at things, how the structure changed. An Indian scientist, Bose, challenged it. Jesse Bose experimented and found that the plants at his house in the balcony respond to his attention to it. It sounds unscientific, right? But he's a Nobel scientist. He said, this is what it is. There is a nervous system. There is a kind of a feeling. Sentiency is there in a very gradual portion. That is a nerves on a nervous system on a biological plant. Structure, no. But the argument is structure is not everything. Function is there. Function doesn't depend on structure. I saw in a BBC program many months back, and there they showed this particular insect in South Africa. In the male insect matures a couple of weeks ahead of the female insect before they get mate. Okay, but the South African orchid, a particular orchid, what it does is it creates its bud in the shape of the female insect. So the male insect goes there and then checks it out, and it is not. It goes from one flower to other, to flower to flower. By the time the pollination is done, 2 weeks passed, the flowers dither away, the female insects come, and their life continues. Orchid is happy, everybody is happy. How does a structural study would give you this knowledge? So the psychic part is there. The functional part is there. The one more example I would say is the honeybee. The honeybee, what it does is, it goes, only the queen bee is got a progeny. It can, everything is a neuter gender. The working bee will go out and search for honey and comes back. When it has found honey, what they say, the scientists say, they perform a kind of a ritual dance before the hive. It's very interesting. So once it does a dance and then it settles down, every other working bee knows that this guy has found out honey, and everything goes as a swarm, takes it out, brings back. See, there is a communication, psyche is there. So, sorry, I digress that, but what I'm saying is the psychic part of ourself is important. And because it's more important for us, because we know our psychic part is more evolved. And Vedanta also puts you another important responsibility on us, because the seeming death of departing from the physical body is a ticket to next journey for us. The next journey for us is the Sukshma Sarira, subtle body, Chittapasam. With the money it is collected through the Pava Punya, it buys a ticket, and then it goes for the next physical body to yoga, to become one with. So therefore, that Sukshma body is psychic. So therefore, if that is the one carrying around, going around, creating personalities, and what it is storing in itself is the ticket to the next birth. So I'm talking about the practical life here again. We have to really address that. But then how do we address this? So then again, it helps you to come into Vedanta or the Vedic school of thoughts. You put all into the mind. So therefore, we need an approach where we focus on the mind. Why I have to focus on the mind? Because if mind is an instrument, and if you are using it as an instrument, you are well off. I wanted to attend this class today, you think, but then suddenly you see this football match or cricket match on the television. Let's watch the cricket match. Class can be recorded. It'll come on the WhatsApp. I can see it later. You think it's your decision, right? Mind is so clever. It gives you the honor of taking the decision, make you as the boss, but it makes you do what it wants you to do. So this, instead of being simple karanam or karuvi or instrument, it has become a karta. Imagine you drive the car and then you got a navigation and you put on, you drive it. But imagine as soon as you sit down, the car says, okay, I know where I want to go. You start going there. On the way, it is seeing a similar brand. A Prius sees another Prius and it takes a parking and then they talk to each other and you sit there. You have no control. You would not go wherever you want to go. An instrument to help you go where you need to go, have to behave as an instrument. That means I must have the control on it. Not only that, and mind does it because the mind thinks, leaning back on the sofa, eating popcorn at 10 o'clock in the morning, watching the Friends for the 200th time is joyful because it has taken a role of bhokta. Right? We learned in Vedanta, the experiencer in me is the karta and bhokta. And I have the body and mind as an instrument to do an experience. But now mind is the karta, mind is the bhokta. I'm lost. So 99.9% of the time, we are just a zombie. I think it's Freud who said, we are lived by some force. Beautifully said. If you really understand what he means, we are lived by some force. We are not, we are in our life. Nothing we see is fact. Everything we see is filtered by a perception and our focus of mind. It fill up the gap. There's an optical, neurological gap filling. But there's something more important called secondary elaboration. Secondary elaboration is in law, it's a very important point. Psychology also. You have witnessed something, right? You see something, some miracle happen, and you saw it, experience it, you're truthful. But when you are explaining to somebody else, you will add something, not intentionally. Because when you see something is not fitting the story well, either consciously or unconsciously, your brain puts in fillers. The second elaboration is very, very difficult one to resolve. That's the reason why a fact is not truth. A fact is a factored incident of knowledge that you got, which is good in the court of law because we are limited by the facts. But the truth surpasses that. So therefore, I'm taking more time in this elaboration before jumping into it. It'll help you. Therefore, the mind is that we are going to treat the mind in two different ways. As a very naughty child, you're going to beat it up, tie it up in the pillar, but also as the Devata. You're going to do namaskaram to it, worship it, Manasa Devata. Why? Because mind is both a bandha karanam, a reason for binding into samsara. But mind is also the moksha sadhanam. It is in the middle. It is a maya in a way. See, when you say avarana shakti, viksheva shakti, hiding and projecting. So if the hiding is finished and projecting is start, there must be a boundary, right? How do you define the boundary? See, when you say boundaries, you can say at home, It is outside, is inside, because you have a step. Okay, just extend to yourself. What is outside and what is inside you? Outside is my body. Inside is my mind. Oh, wait a minute. It's my mind, therefore it is also a possession. So when you are trying to look at this point of confluence, point of absorption, point of evolution, this is called Sandhya Kal. Pratosham, we worship to God, Shiva. We're dancing that time. Sandhya Vandana we do. The Sandhi is when these two seemingly impossible polarities, dichotomy, merges, one becomes the other. Shunyam, Purna. Mind is there. So suddenly now you see the mind is the Brahman. It's a Maya. What we consider as Achetanam, because you see, everything comes from the Brahman. So, therefore, coming back to the realities in the practical way. So we need a method, means to really manipulate this mind. I'm going to beat it up, tie it up. I'm going to worship it, which means I need exercise and patterns and means and methods to make it submissive to me. I also need japa, dhyana, and upasanas to worship it. Therefore, slowly, I can see myself into this. Now, if you look at the pond and you see your face, suddenly a fish comes and makes ripples over it, and your face is gone, or the mud is come up, and then you need to wait for it to clear. So mind is like a muddy water. So we need a way to clean it up. For what? Just to see ourselves into this. So that's the reason why we are moving into. But again, other caution I would say, we will take it, say slowly to understand it well. The words will be different. You're going to different school of thought. Yoga Darshana, Sankhya, all this is a different school of thought within the Sanatana Dharma, all depending on the Vedas. Every school of thought brings in, first thing they do, they bring in a new vocabulary, new terms, right? In modern in Western science, we do a glossary of terms. A byte in a computer science is different from home science. A quanta in a physics is different from quanta in a neural networks in a computing. So in each science, in each faculty of knowledge, words are different, or words are used in a different context. So therefore, I give you a warning, a gentle warning, that we will see many words which look very familiar to us before, but completely different meaning. So I would say as an exercise you should do, if you have time to go back into what we learned in the Vedanta, you can write down the words, 40, 50 words, all the pronouns only, nouns only. You will see that very differently. Bhagavad Gita, we just now listened to Vibhuti Yoga, Sankhya Yoga. That yoga is a chapter heading in a literal meaning, and very different meaning there. Here we are going to have a very different meaning. So therefore, we will go through the words and understand it. So, but I told you before briefly about different schools of thought in Sanatana Dharma. Just to recap, a theist school, or I would say Astika school, and Nastika school. Na-Astika. Nothing to do with God. Astika means not God, no. Let's take a very simple definition. Astika means that which depends on the scriptures and Vedas for the expounding knowledge. Nastika are those which do not believe in the Vedas. They believe in their intellect or what they can see and smell and senses. So in the Nastika school, we have Charvakas, materialist who thinks, forget about God, forget about destiny, it's all accident, fluke, like a mushroom, you just come in there into this world, freak out, enjoy. By the way, have some ethics, be truthful, live happily and go, fatafat, you go. Okay, we talked about it, we can reject it very easily. Then you have Jains. So they have a sort of multiple words, multiple universe, but they don't believe in Vedas. And you can be perpetually floating in the sky as a Tirthankaras. And again, it was not complete for us. Then Buddha took a number of philosophies in Sankhyas and Vedas, but then he completely rejected for very good reasons, because he wanted to focus. You see, you go to the kindergarten and you see children are just shouting there, and the teacher is also sleeping. And you are a head teacher, you back through. And you go into the class, and what do? You don't teach anything. You just stand up on a chair and then close all the books, sit down. That's what Buddha did. It was going havoc in the Vedic karmas. He said, close all this, forget it. Be good. He attained his liberation, but subsequently the people followed him, lost the context. They said, close the books, they said, close the Vedas, and they propagated their own theory. So all this is called Nashtika schools. So we don't study them. We can argue about them. We can go and study for intellectual purpose, but immaterial to us. Then we come to the Astika school. We saw Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya Vaisheshikas, Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa, or Vedanta. All this we've gone through it. But I want, because we are going to go into Yoga Darshana, and Yoga Darshana is derivative or largely depending on Sankhya. So I wanted to, we're not going to go into the Sankhya Darshana and spend another session on it, but I want to just grab the important point so that it really puts us in the right path. So Darshana, as you know, is philosophy, knowledge, information. So Sankhya means enumeration, counting, categorization. So Kapila didn't start, I will create a Sankhya Darshana. Kapila is the expounder of it. Kapila is Lord Parabrahma Narayana himself. See, in every time we associate the great seers as the incarnation of God, because it gives us some shraddha on their wordings. So Kapila enumerated this philosophy called Sankhya Darshana. See, all this, they did not just stood up one day and say, look, I will create a philosophy for somebody. No. They were all Mahatmas because they look at the humanity and identified what is the humanity is requiring now. What they see problems, they suffer. So Western scientists, philosophers say that Indian philosophy is all about dukkha, tvera. Why are they not seeing life as happiness? Enjoy life. Summer comes, barbecues. Winter comes, drinking into the fireplace. No, we do enjoy all those things. We see the dukkha beyond this. So Kapila look at this dukkha as the problem to solve, and he did not go through this Vedic rituals for it. He wanted to use his intellect. So we normally go to somebody bigger than us to take refuge. Children, this is neurotically programmed to us. What happened? A child does it. Whenever there's a fear, it goes to the mother or the father. They will do protection. They are bigger than us. They look up to the mother like this, looking up to something bigger. So the men looked at the earth as the biggest part. For earth is the Brahman or Ishvara. But the earth seems to be just slipping into the water. Therefore, water should be the bigger than the earth. The water is God. But water is submerged into the volcanoes, in the fire, so fire becomes the thing. Fire is engrossed by the air and the wind. Wind is Brahman. But everything is in the sky, in the Akash. So Akasham is Brahman. So he looks for the Bru means big. Brahman. Big, big, big. So he was looking for Brahman, which is big, containing everything else. But the whole sky disappears in your sleep. Therefore, the macrocosmic expansion of it convolutes and then abates into my thoughts, but my buddhi. So if my buddhi brings into this, what about a buddhi of everything? So there's a huge things there. So this kind of thoughts gone through the Kapila's mind, and then he created Tattva Samasa Sutra. We will understand what is Sutra means in the later. So all his thoughts come into Samasam. Samasam means, in Sanskrit grammar, it's called compounding words. Everything is compounded. So therefore he's giving a dissection, discriminating intellect. I'm going to now split everything into component part. So his essence of knowledge is condensed into 25 sutras. From this came Patanjali's. We will learn about who is Patanjali and all that later. He created what's called a Yoga Darshana. The difference is in the Kapila's version of it, because he applied his mind and his context of scriptures on that time was very different. He did not see a need for an Ishvara. He identified, he's got a problem. We will see the problem, what the problem he's got. He comes to the point where the cause and effect has stopped. There are causeless cause exist. He could not answer why that exists. But assuming that exists, then I don't need a God. So it's called a Nir-Ishvara Sankhya. Nir means nil, not. These are all the words we have given to them later. But Patanjali, we will see how Patanjali's approach was very pragmatic and scientific. He took Sankhya, but he took all other schools as well. And he had a quest. I don't want this theoretical knowledge. I want it to be practical. But he had a problem. He had this variable there. In mathematics, if you do not know something, you assume some value because it helps you to solve the problem. He said, yeah, I am not going to answer that, but I need this Ishvara. So let me have Ishvara. So he had Sakha Ishvara Sankhya. He took the Sankhya philosophy, but applied Ishvara into this. So I'm giving an insight to you. Therefore, what you're going to learn is not without Ishvara. So whatever God you worship Ganesha, Narayana, Shiva, Parabrahma, Allah, Jesus, doesn't matter. But you need to have a willingness to put a placement for this Parabrahman as an Ishvara. But then what he produced is called Yoga Sutra. Again, we will elaborate what it is subsequently. But I want to go, before jumping into yoga, I want to get into what is that Patanjali took it. I'm sorry, if you thought today you're starting with the yoga and with the mat and the water bottle next to you, I'll disappoint you. Yes. That's not our purpose. So we may go there someday, but here we are talking about the philosophy to understand it, what it is. So I want to take just a couple of statements from Ishvara Krishna, a great Mahatma, whose Karika is the very well known and elaborated, articulated for Sankhya Darshana. So what does he say? Dukkhatraya abhigadat jignasa tat abhigadatake hetau drishtesa apartha chetna ekanta adhyanta abhavat. Don't worry, I will not label the point with the word-wise, we don't have time. Dukkhatraya. Luckily, I think we just listened to the Bhagavad Gita class. We talked about 3 different worlds: Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika, Adhyatmika. So I will not labor this point to explain this. So simply you can say there are 3 different conditioning that causes impediments, trouble to us. One is what I create to myself, Adhyatmika. Because I am my first enemy, because many things I want to do, my good mind tells me do it, my bad mind tells me don't do it. Adhyatmika. It's not something I plan. See, you will know when you learn Yoga Shastram that thought is coming to you. Thought is not, you can say, I think. You don't think. You hold thoughts. You receive thoughts. So we will see more about it. So Adhyatmikam. So everybody else is creating problem for me. Everything else around me creating problem for me. Adhibhautikam. A material aspect of it creating problem for me. Or the natural causes. So from the 3 different, again, you see in our Shastras, we try to generalize it so that we can quite easily handle this. So all our pains come from either of these sources. So when the pain comes to us, he is making a statement. Naturally, we have a desire to find a way to remove this pain. Is it not? This is a fact, yes. Whenever there's a pain comes to me from any of those 3 sources, I want to solve this pain. Therefore, I have a desire to know how to remove this pain. Then the second sentence says, well, what is so great about this statement? There is always means, there are visible means. When you're hungry, go and eat. When you are hurt, go to the doctor, get a bandage. When you have no money, go and work, earn money. What is there to know something new? Because for every problem that we see in this world, there is a way out. This is what is called drishtase. What is visible means of removing the pain. All the materialists will say this, yeah, for everything there's a solution. Don't go to God, don't go to all this Vedanta, yoga, all this nonsense, don't do this. If you're doing that, you are missing the point. Solve this problem, there's a solution for it. You need to solve the problem, you need to take the solution, but not without understanding the problem status. Because all these visible solutions that you see are superfluous. Why? Because you apply this solution, you fix this problem, the tire gets punctured again, the problem comes again. So they are neither absolutely complete nor abiding. Now, who will argue with this statement? If Kapila make this statement, therefore his concern is find a way to know the knowledge, to remove the pain, which is absolutely complete and completely abiding. Because whatever is available in this world as a visible means, what is visible means, this is my interpretation here, is something coming out of my buddhi. Of course, Kapila talks about buddhi yukti purvam. You will see that you need something beyond that one. So he started with this aim, a noble aim. So threefold: pain, desire to know, We saw that one. So how he approached this? So Vishtavat Anushraviya sa he avishuddhi shaya atishaya yuktaha tat viprita shreya vyakta avyakta jnana vijnanat. So now he elaborates on the revealed means. All the revealed means, here he is including even the Veda Karma Kandas. Because revealed, he says, here is not saying that given means, that is a worldly one. Because he is talking about rational approach. He has got a reason to reject the yajnas and karmas which are done with a very skewed up purpose. This is what is the trigger for Buddha also. Buddha took Sankhya philosophy. The revealed means are inefficient. We saw about the worldly means. We saw about our human efforts are inefficient, incomplete. There's no argument. Here he's also talking about revealed means. That means the revealed procedures of yajnas and Ashwamedha Yaga, Vajrayeya Yaga. Kapila saw in that perspective of his, in the context, this is very important to understand, in the context where he saw, how he saw, with impurity, destruction, and excess. Avishuddhi, kshaya, destruction, atisaya, excess, impurity, because it is ahimsa was there. There are some rituals, tantric rituals, they destroy things, they kill. Ashwamedha Yaga, the kings of the breed, they will kill 100 or 1,000 horses. And there are discrimination, differences. You have to be certain purity. You had to have Agnihotra so many times. You must have born in this family. So all this discrimination crept in. You know the story of Vishwamitra, how he was punished for not born in a Brahminical family. All this is considered excess. Therefore, a kind of aversion came to Kapila. And he said, a contrary method is better. That method should have a very discriminating knowledge that can be challenged and proven. Doing what? He already conceived in his mind that what is seen is not complete. Therefore, there is something unseen. Therefore, he said, Vyakta, Avyakta, manifested and unmanifested. You see, now he is thinking about, that's why it's called samsayam, compound. He sees the world, everything is a component of what is manifested, what is unmanifested. Unmanifested means what is not seen, what is not yet out. Not created, creation is not a question here, unmanifest. But luckily, he held on to the thought, it is not just manifested and unmanifested, because if something is manifested or unmanifested, you must know it. There is a knowing. See, if you do not know, if something is not in your consciousness, it is not in your world. Nothing exists in your world until you know it. Therefore, in my world, if I do not know, that doesn't exist. In your world, if you do not know, that doesn't exist in your world. But if you have an Ishvara who knows everything, and if it's nothing, if something is not existing in his view, that cannot exist. So you can see in a scale may be different. The concept is exactly the same, that manifested and unmanifested have to be there, and knowing have to be there. I will take 5 more minutes to give a logical step. So I'm giving you see, when sometimes, because we are talking about sutras, the secondary elaboration has to be very thin and meaningful. So we are all trying to elaborate what they thought and what they revealed. And that's the reason why there are so many different interpretations. Shankara says this way, Ramanuja says this way, I understand this way. So there is so many different ways. Nothing can be perfect, but all tending towards perfect. So therefore, one way to minimize the risk of impurity in our elaboration is to think through the psychic way of what could have been his thought process. That's why I was just building this elaboration here, that Kapila thought, therefore he find a solution which shows the manifested means it comes with everything that is there. It ends. There is something unmanifested and there's something knowing. So Vyakta, Avyakta, the knowing is called Jiva. So you can see now the resemblance of Vedanta comes somewhere there. Just keep in your mind. So what he did, therefore, he rejected rituals. Liberation is only by the right knowledge. See, again, it is a Vedantic thought. Because the knowing is important. Without knowing, if it's not a conscious space, experience doesn't exist. Experience is not there, life is not there. But then he comes to synthesize his Siddhanta. He said, there are fourfold approach. A cause, in effect, a cause and effect, and a causeless. I don't know, I'm not going to elaborate because we've gone through this. I think there is session 8 or 9, I think we discussed this. But I want to recap it because you have to be fertile in your mind. Otherwise, we will lose out in Patanjali's Darshana. Cause is the cause, Karanam. Effect is the effect which comes out of the Karanam. So a thing can be a cause only. This is Kapila's approach. A thing can be effect only. A thing can be cause and effect. What is an example? Milk is a cause and an effect. Why? Milk causes curd. So it's also an effect in curd. What is an effect only? Ash is an effect only. Ash cannot be burnt anymore. It's an effect. So he did that. And again, without going in detail, to substantiate this fourfold thinking, he had two propositions. One is called Satkarya Vada. Vada means articulation. Karya is effect. Sat means existence. Satkarya Vada means effect, existence, articulation, which means effect always exists. This is, for a Vedantic student, it's a peanut because we deal with more complex statements, right? Effect already exists means effect is already unmanifest in the cause. It has not got a shape and a form. A necklace is already existing in a gold. The goldsmith extract and shape the necklace. So necklace comes out of the gold. That's what it meant. Therefore, every effect, therefore, can be shown as a parinamam, a transformation of cause. Understand? So just don't need to go deeper into this, but this is what it is. So based on this, this is where we differ from the Sankhya Vada. They say both cause and effect are real. What are we going to say in Vedanta? The effect is apparently real, temporally real. There are differences in the Vedantic schools, but generally. Then his Sankhya is enumeration, categorization. So he categorized. Then we asked the question, okay, Kapila ji, tell me, what have you enumerated? He said, the causeless one is Purusha, the knowing one. All-knowing one is Purusha. The light of everything. Fine. He says causeless. Therefore, don't ask me, he says, don't ask me how his Purusha came about. So it's a full stop there. The cause is Prakruti. Here is the important point. Purusha does not create anything. Cause is not, so God is, this is why Ishvara doesn't appear in Kapila's word. Purusha is just a causeless being. Purusha does not create anything. Who creates? Prakruti. Who is Prakruti? He thinks Prakruti is also existing with Purusha. Kapila does not answer who is the cause of Prakruti. This is where modification comes later. So for him, Purusha and Prakruti stay as it is. In Bhagavad Gita, this comes in. Today I think in a very good context, we were told that Bhagavad Gita is not Vedanta, but I with respectfully beg to differ because it is Vedanta. It's how you approach it. So Purusha Prakruti also talked about it. If there is a duality all the time, this is where the dual matas came in. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Then he says, from the Prakruti came Mahat. Mahat is the universal consciousness or individual consciousness. In macrocosmic way, universal consciousness. Microcosmic way, individual consciousness. Ahamkara, Tanmatra, okay. Effect Manas, then effect of Manas, Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, Panchabhuta. I think I will take in 10 minutes. I'm going to stop it here. So what we are leaving today is that we have taken a sabbatical from Vedanta. We go to the other school, like we're going to the gym now. Here we are going to learn the new terms, dumbbells and aerobics and all this we are going to take. Therefore, we learn the new terms. The gym instructor is going to tell you, by looking at the way you do exercise and you're being fit, you will say, come on, do this. There's a bodybuilding competition there. You can go. And it will give you this kind of reward. So there are opportunities for you to be diverted to take a path for other gains. But we came for getting fit and getting back to Vedanta. That's the reason why we are going to be very selective from the gym instructor's words. We only choose what is needed for Sankhya from yoga for the Vedanta. So we will continue from the next class from where we leave it here. So, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
So now switch off the TV.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya.
Asatoma Satgamaya.
Satgamaya.
Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya.
Soma Jyotirgamaya.
Roma Amrutangamaya.
Mrityurma Amritangamaya.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
There was a